Hello, my name is Hugo Prevo, and you're listening to, to my voice, but more specifically to episode number 12 of SVGA, your PC Retro Gaming Podcast. Yes, episode 12, and not another DLC. We were finally able to find some time to do a proper episode. With, of course, my friend Robert Hills. Hello, Robert.
Hey, Hugo, how's it hanging?
It's going well. How are you?
Not too bad. Finally kind of settled in here.
That's pretty good. Robert, this has been a journey. Last time we did an episode was at the start of April, so it's been a while, when we talked about Splinter Cell. In the months since then, we both got our 2 doses of the vaccine against COVID-19. You moved from Montreal to a little unknown village called Bytown, and we recorded 5 DLCs, so 2 interviews and 3 sessions where we discuss video game topics that we are fond of, so flight controls and the strategy game Hearts of Iron 4. But now, it is time to get back to our roots. What did we play this week, Robert?
This week we played a little game called Burnout Paradise.
Burnout Paradise, indeed, developed by Criterion Games and published by Electronic Arts, a game from 2008. So it's maybe a stretch to call it retro, but let's say it's at the extreme end of our spectrum here, so at the podcast. It also got a re-release in 2018 in the form of a remastered edition, and that is the edition that we played for this episode. Yep. It's on a platform that we won't mention by name, but a platform that exists. The name starts with O, and we will leave it at that. Before we go any deeper or any faster, in this case, could you tell me a bit about the game itself?
Well, I mean, I guess the easiest way to describe it for listeners is it's basically Grand Theft Auto without any of the shooting and the violence. It's an open world driving game where you're basically racing or demolition derbying or some form of arcade racing in was essentially an open city that has it's got a downtown. It's got a portland. It's got a up in the hills kind of thing. It's if you've played any kind of open world game that in one way or another takes from that sort of that kind of game style of Grand Theft Auto, this is sort of in that sort of vein. One it's very similar to that kind of sort of predates Grand Theft Auto though is it feels a lot to me like Midtown Madness, an old Microsoft game based on sort of Chicago.
Yeah.
But we can get into that a bit more in a bit.
But yeah, Midtown Madness, wow, this takes me back in 1999, I think. Not sure.
Maybe 98, something like that.
But yeah, so Burnout Paradise, it's like you said, open world racing game. It's interesting that you talked about you specified arcade racing, because I know you're a big fan of simulation racing. You play a lot of Formula One. But yeah, it's nothing of the sort. You don't really need to take out your wheel.
I did not.
You don't need to really take many. I mean, the only thing you need to take into account, I think, is what is your speed. I think.
Yeah,
that's pretty much it.
Mostly speed, and you want to try and not hit things. I don't know. Like I actually played with a keyboard, and I found that to be really actually kind of good because I played Grand Theft Auto, for example, primarily with a keyboard rather than a controller. So to me, it was there are obvious limitations to a keyboard in any kind of driving or basically any sort of game, but it's one that's designed to be very forgiving, I guess is the best way of putting it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what it is. I did play it on the keyboard too. I mean, I have to explain. I played this game when it came out around, well, it came out in 2008. I played it maybe around 2009, 2010, and I played it a lot. And I didn't have any controller at the time, so I used the keyboard. So moving forward with W, as one does, and turning and wow, I'm looking for the word here. Not slowing down, but breaking. Yeah, there it is. Wow, that's. I'm due. So I have. I need to take some vacation time, I think. So anyway, so moving forward, accelerating with W, turning with the arrow keys, and then braking with the backward arrow key, and it went pretty well. And when I played the remastered version for the first time, I said to myself, well, I'm going to try it with a controller, which I had. And I wasn't sure it was really the best experience.
Oh, really? I didn't take the time to. I mean, I have a controller somewhere. It's still in a box. I'm not fully unpacked yet, but playing it controls. I was like, oh god, maybe I'm gonna want to try and pull it out, and I never did. I didn't find it necessary.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to that in a bit, but I mostly stayed with the racers that you just need to move fast, basically. Yeah. And because there are some racers that you need to do stunts, for example, and I believe you may need more control to use a car that's more easy to steer. But I just went with the basic racing part of the game, and just go straight ahead. So yeah, basically, the principle of the game, besides being just an open world racing game, is you need to win a certain number of races to progress in the game and to move up the ladder, if you can call it that, to eventually get to the elite status of Burnout driver or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's a Burnout license. I never took my license quite that high. I played enough to kind of get the feel for it, but yeah, I think it's Burnout driver.
And so basically what it does is you have a few dozen races that you can do around the city, and it's quite diverse. Like you said, there's a bunch of stuff to do, and what happens is when you start the game, you have to win, I think, five or
six
races like that. And eventually, as you move on, you need to win more and more and more races. And eventually, something like, to get the elite status, it's like 35 races.
Yeah.
And maybe one of the most frustrating points of the game is, and we can maybe get right into this right now, is that it's always the same thing. You always have to start again, do the same races again. One of the other problems is that when you do a race, for example, a standard race, is that you have 6 or 7 endpoints, 6 or 7 finish lines, and it's always the same thing. And so if you have already played this game before, or if you get into it right now, you'll end up maybe in 2 or 3 hours of playtime. You'll have the gist of the thing. So there's really no surprises at the 35th hour, and so there's a whole new stuff to do. No, it's the same stuff.
Yeah, I think I played about 2.5 hours, and I didn't get a full feel for the city. Like, I couldn't, navigate a race without checking my map first. Like, okay, I want to wait 4 turns. I'm gonna go right. I'm gonna go left.
Yeah.
And then, oh yeah, that might be that bridge thing where you take the jump. But it was enough that you that finish line at the country club is the one where you go around the big U-turn thing, and that kind of, that was one of the weirder parts of it, was there are only 6 finish lines, or 8 finish lines, one for the.
There's less than a dozen. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, Yeah, which I think, one of the weaker points of it. And it does, there's the straight race, there's the one where you're the marked man, where you have to, there's a bunch of other cars basically just trying to knock you off the road.
Yeah.
There's one where you have to, can't remember what they call it, but it's basically demolition derby, and you have to knock out a certain number of cars from the race, which they come back, which is odd, but anyways. And then there's a couple where it's, you have to unlock certain cars, and only with that car can you then do the race or whatever it is. But, at a certain point, you're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, and I mean, I do like this game a lot, I'd say. But yeah, that's the point. Beside the fact that it's always mostly the same thing, is that there's a lot to do besides racing, and that's maybe the odd thing about the game, is that you can explore. There's a bunch of places you can go, and there's nothing to compete for. There's no time limit. There's no point limit. It's just you can go there. There's a racetrack somewhere. There's a half-hidden racetrack, and you just can go around and around, and maybe listen to that song from Cake, the one about the guy who's doing loops on the racetrack, and that's a bit meta. But yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff to do. You can do some stunts, some jumps. There's I don't know if you tried it. There's the version that we played. There's a DLC in it, which is a whole new island on the other side of a very long bridge.
Okay, I didn't actually do the island part.
Okay.
But I did use a bunch of the special cars just to
just to have a feel of
which they were, kind of like, oh, these are much better than the cars we start with. But
yeah, and that's maybe another problem, is that, like you said, you're supposed to unlock cars, and the way it works is that, okay, you win a race, and then the DJ Atomica, who is the narrator maybe of the game, and who was very, very a lot more annoying in the original version of the game. They cut him down a little bit in the remastered one, but yeah. So he announces, oh, there's the new whatever car roaming around in Paradise City, and the way to unlock that car is to smash it in a wall, basically. And so you move on slowly with this, and you take special cars to do special races. For example, you won't take a very agile car to do some demolition derbies, because it's going to get destroyed in about 5 seconds. So eventually you'll unlock the van, who's going to be really useful to do this, but not doing stunts and so on and so on. But like you said, there's a bunch of special cars that comes with the remastered version, and there's this, for example, I think there's a racing car, and it's going ultra fast, so you always win the racing parts. And there's the unknown prototype or whatever, who is basically the car that's chasing you in the Markman segments.
Right.
And it's super fast, super resistant, super maneuverable. So I eventually just decided to take this one every time, and I was going so fast that in the races I was alone on the finish line. There was no one behind me for 5 or 6 seconds after I finished it. So basically the game was over. I mean, I was done. So what do you want to do? Do you want to do the same races again and again and again, and eventually get to a point where it's not that the AI becomes better, it's that the AI is just stronger and faster. And they just boost the stats of the AI, and it's becoming really, really difficult, including doing the demolition derbies, because you're going to get destroyed, like I said, in about 5 or 6 seconds.
Yeah, well, that was one of the weird things about it, was that all these special cars were unlocked right from the beginning. And it's odd because it's a game that has a lot of, like, there's billboards hidden all around the city, and you're supposed to break all of them. There's 100 and something, and it's one of those like, oh, if you want to complete the game, like
Yeah.
you got to find, all 30 secret passages, all 120 billboards. There's a bunch of secret special jumps. There's all sorts of stuff like this. So it's very like, hey, if you want to complete the game, it's very completionist. Like, hey, like go find all this secret stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also like, oh, you've downloaded the remastered version, which basically, everyone's going to do because it's the one that's going to work easily. It's the one you can buy, all this stuff. And, oh, yeah, here's all the best stuff, just locked right from the start.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even bother looking at the other stuff at the beginning because I was like, oh, why would it be unlocked? Like, I'm right at the start. And then I was like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a bit weird. It's a weird decision from EA. Maybe they decided to just. I mean, it's EA. I don't know. I'm not sure. Is that? I'm guessing there was a pressure from the fans to do remastered version, but maybe not that much. And it's not a big. I don't think that Burnout is as big as Need for Speed is or was. Yeah. I know the last few installments of Need for Speed were bad, but really, really bad. But Burnout,
there was one Need for Speed I kind of enjoyed. It was actually a lot like Burnout, in the way that it was an open world. You would have really liked it. There were some FMV elements.
Was it Carbon?
No, I think it was just called Need for Speed. Like they did one of those things where they just like call it by the name.
Yeah.
It's been a couple of years and it was on PlayStation, but it was the same kind of idea, except a little less arcade and a little more realistic. Like it's one of those things where racing games, like you can go like Trackmania where you're doing loops and stuff, and so that's like fully arcade, where this is kind of like mostly arcade. This one, was a bit more realistic, and then you get into the sim stuff, which I mean is my preference, but
I mean,
in any case,
sometimes you just wish to go down the street, burning tires, and just going as fast as you can, and just crash into a wall and see in the crash in slow motion, and see that there's no drivers anywhere. There's no pedestrians. There's nobody in the cars. It's a fantasy world. And as much as I want to suffer playing Project Cars 2 and being just knowing that if I miss one turn by 1 degree of the angle, I'm gonna be that in the last place. Sometimes, like I said, I just want to get into a car. It's the same thing with fighting games. Dogfighting games. It's fun to. I know you like DCS World. Is that the right? Yeah. But I don't necessarily always want to be able to explode just by switching the wrong switch, just by turning on the wrong switch in the cockpit before I can even get off the ground. So maybe there's a middle ground somewhere. I'm not saying that Burnout Paradise is a middle ground between Trackmania and Project Cars, but there's somewhere in between. There's a place where you still need to be agile with the controls. You still need to know the terrain, but you can crash into a wall. Nobody will die. You won't necessarily lose the race. It's fun. It's a fun time. But yeah, this takes me to my next topic. What did you think about the music?
It was fun. Like it wasn't bad. Like it's a lot of kind of popular. Like I mean, Paradise City is the theme song, the Guns N' Roses thing. Which at first I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, and it was like, oh Christ, this song again.
It plays every time you launch the game. Every time you get into the game. Yeah, and it
plays the whole song, like all the way through your first 4 or 5 minutes in the game. You're hearing that song again, which it's a pretty good song.
I mean, they paid for the rights, so you can be damn sure they're gonna use it.
Oh yeah, yeah, they used it right into the ground. But like it's got an interesting selection of stuff. Like oh, that's an Avril Lavigne song I'd never heard. Like that's fine. So I don't think I had strong feelings about it, other than like, you know, did we really need to hear Paradise City the first time, the whole song through every time you play?
Yeah,
I don't know. Wouldn't have been my choice, but you
yeah.
know, that's why I'm sitting here talking about it rather than building it. Maybe I don't know.
But yeah, I think I remember the soundtrack being one of the main aspects of the game back in 2008. I'm not sure if they put everything. I think they paid. I mean, it's CA, they have the money. So I think they paid enough to get the rights back to use every song that was there at the beginning and then add some more. I mean, it's pretty cool. I'm not talking about Paradise City, but it's getting it ends up getting on our nerves. But listening to, I think there's some LCD sound system in there. I think there's some.
Oh yeah, no, there were some. I mean, I said Avril Lavigne because that was just literally the last I was playing just before we started, and that was the last song.
Yeah.
But it was actually, other than Paradise City, I don't know that I hit a repeat in my 2.5, 3 hours of playing.
Yeah,
which is pretty good because it wasn't random music made for the game. It was they put a lot of money, or at least some money, for a lot of songs.
Yeah, and there's some Jane's Addiction in there. There's some Fate No More, I think. And I don't know if you discovered this, but if you just stop driving, don't touch the controls, eventually you'll get into some sort of spinning third-person view.
Okay.
And you're gonna get classical music.
Oh, really? No, I didn't do that.
And
okay.
and this is why I think the game is good, because there's a bunch of unknown. I mean, why do they do this? There's no reason for that. You could just have the same soundtrack playing on and just have your car idling by on the road. But no, they're going to play some classical music. It's going to be a spinning 3D view. There's a game mode where you just your car starts spinning on itself, and you can make passing cars explode, and you can get a high score, which is calculated in the monetary value for some reason.
That's okay.
And there's so much stuff to do beside racing, and that's why I think it's very weird, a very weird game. There's also you can compete online and offline with other players to get the fastest time on, I think, every road and every street in the game.
I did manage to get one road. It took me like 8 tries, but I got the road.
Speaking of online, did you try I have no idea if the multiplayer scene is still alive, because I didn't. It was I think a big thing at the time. You could do an online party with friends and strangers on the internet and just drive around Paradise City. But yeah, I think it's dead. It's been dead for a while. And I mean, it's even the launching the game sometimes causes problems. So I cannot imagine EA fixing the multiplayer and opening up servers for this. But yeah, shall we talk briefly about this launching problem?
You know what? We can, but I only briefly had it, and it kind of fixed itself. So
that's good.
Yeah, because I know you had a problem where I think you had to, because you warned me about it.
Yeah.
And said that I was going to have to run Origin in offline mode.
Yeah.
And the first time it loaded, it didn't work, and then I was like, "Oh, that's weird." I just tried it again. I was like, "Maybe it'll just work," and it did.
Oh, that's good, because what happened to me was, and I needed to Google this, and that's where I found the fix, is that the game will launch, and then you get to a screen where the game tries to connect to a server online.
Oh,
because it was at the time it was supposed to be some always online kind of thing with
right.
was it under Games for Windows Live or something cursed like that,
Oh
and
God, yeah, it was
and
around that era, wasn't
yeah,
it?
and
Ugh.
so and then that's where it crashes, and so I needed to what was suggested to me on some forum somewhere was launch the game, alt tab out of it, put Origin in offline mode, and then get back to the game. And if you stay in offline mode, you won't have any problem.
Okay.
And whatever, I mean, it works. It's a bit
Yeah.
weird as a fix, but it works. So, but yeah, I mean, I wanted to know. Of course, it's the remastered edition, so they pimped a bit. Not to say pimp, but they fixed some stuff, some graphical stuff. But did you like the aesthetics? Did you like the
Yeah, I thought it was actually a pretty decent looking game for, I mean, these remasters, basically they just brought it up so the textures looked fine in a higher resolution, I assume.
yeah
And it looked fine. The one thing I wish it had was when I was driving, I was really looking to be able to use my mouse to kind of like get a peek around corners kind of thing to like
yeah
get a little bit of a view, which was more of like a sort of Grand Theft Auto habit because you're not like inside the car, you're a third person sitting up behind it, and it's kind of nice when you're turning a corner to be able to sort of look that way, but that's more of a control issue than a graphics thing. Like I thought it was a pretty reasonably well thought out city, and it looked fine. It didn't strike me as horribly dated. It was like, okay, this is for 2008, not bad.
yeah. I think that too. I mean, it's pretty large for the time.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a bit of trickery here and there to make it look bigger than it is really. I mean, it's not. What was the game of the Elder Scrolls series? I think it was the second one where it was computer generated and it eventually gave birth to a map which was 16,000 square kilometers or something like
oh my
that.
god, yeah,
It
no, it's
was
not that.
that's I think that's the name of Daggerfall. Maybe that's the name of the game.
Oh, okay,
Anyway,
yeah,
so it has a bit of trickery, as I said, and it gave way to just gigantic maps. And most of it was empty, of course, so that's not really helpful. But yeah, in this
no,
case, in our case, it's. I mean, if you drive from one point to the next, of course, the road isn't straight, but it's going to take you maybe, 4, 5, maybe 3 to 4 minutes full speed. If you don't
yeah,
crash into anything, you don't have to slow down. 3 to 4 minutes, maybe five, to get to one point from one point of the city to the other end of the map. So yeah, I think it's still pretty large, and there's a bunch of different environments. So as we talked, there's a downtown, there's a port area, there's this additional island that they gave us in the DLC. There's the hill section, and so on and so on. So there's some space to do some activities, that they say
yeah,
in that movie.
yeah. It's smaller than like a Grand Theft Auto map, but it
Yeah.
is also, you get some good variety, and yeah.
Would you recommend Burnout Paradise?
Um, if you can find it cheap enough, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a fun arcade kind of game. It's not, you're it's not going to require 20 hours of mastering how to corner, and you're not going to have to learn braking points, and I gotta make sure I've hit the brakes at the 100-meter board, going into turn one, like nothing like that. Um, but if you really enjoy like the driving parts of Grand Theft Auto, which I keep going back to, and I'm sorry for talking about another game, but if you really did like a lot of the driving parts, this is something that's like, okay, well, here's just driving, and I actually had a good time.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if I will recommend it without. That's hard to say because it's something you need to check out once you you bought the game. But if you're looking for a multiplayer experience, maybe that's not the right game for you. I have no idea if the servers are still online. I have no idea if you can play with friends. However, like you said, if you want just to drive around, you're not even there's no obligation to do the races to earn points or whatever.
You can just drive. To start a race, you have to stop at a stoplight and then hit your brake and your gas at the same time.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to, just keep driving.
Yeah,
like, that would look. I'm not going, and you can't.
Yeah, absolutely, and everything is unlocked, so you can choose the car that you. I don't think all the basic cars are unlocked, but all the special cars are. There's also something we didn't mention. There's a bunch of races that need to be done with motorcycles.
Yeah, I didn't try out the motorcycles, actually.
It's a motorcycle. It's not that fun.
I didn't think it would be too much different, so I didn't.
Yeah. And so, you can, like you said, you can just drive around if you want to listen to the music. It's about $9.50 on Steam right now. So if you want to give it a try, I think it's once gone down to $3, I think last year. So maybe it's going to go down again. I think I bought mine for $5.50 something. So
$5 to $6 is a good price, I think. $9, if it's one you've got nostalgia for and you want to grab, I'd say go for it.
Yeah,
but if you're curious but not super interested, $5 or $6 I think is about where I'd.
Yeah, and I think to the difference of recent, I haven't played them all, but some recent Need for Speed game once again who are just boring. And so straightforward. You can, I mean, I think it's one of the good example of open world games. It's not something like maybe a Far Cry game where everything is. They have to balance everything because you can go anywhere. In this type of game, it's just, as I said, if you progress in the game, the AI will just get faster and stronger. It's not they won't drive better, they won't it's just you're gonna have to floor it instead of being more prudent. But otherwise it's if you want to give it a go, I think it's one of the titles I come back to once in a while just to have fun, just to clear my head and drive around, maybe not listen to Paradise City because it eventually got on our nerves. But so if you want to give it a go, I won't say a strong recommendation, but recommendation. I think that's
if you're looking for something a little more serious, slightly more serious, and I was actually kind of serious about you might like this one because of the full motion video, but the latest one, Need for Speed, it's 2016, but it's just called Need for Speed. It does a lot of stuff, but it adds a bit of a story to it, and it's a little more not realistic, but it kind of expands on this sort of format and goes a little deeper. And there's you can be a drift racer or a speed racer, and you, instead of bashing a car off the road to unlock it, you earn enough money to buy parts or buy a car, and so it just kind of takes it to that next level. Right now it's $27, which I probably wouldn't go for, but
yeah, I mean it's I think, did Criterion do some Need for Speed games? I don't know, because I probably, since
I would be surprised.
I mean they all belong to EA, so maybe they end up doing some cross referencement here or some cross French, some cross. Anyways, I'm struggling to find my words here, but so maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But I think.
Oh yeah, they did. Yeah.
They've
done several. Oh, they also did the Battlefront series. Okay.
So anyway, if you want to give it a go, it's interesting. And I don't know if the original game is still on sale, but maybe you can find a copy on CD somewhere. or a key somewhere, but I don't think it's still available on Steam, or definitely not available on Origin, that's for sure. So anyway, Robert, as always, thank you for being here with me.
It's a real pleasure. Enjoyed talking about this game and enjoyed playing it.
That's good. That's better than I won't go back every time, but that's better than a certain second episode.
So close.
So close. Yeah, there's a quota, you have to mention it sometimes.
Yeah.
And they give me
right
$5.
At the end, but you got there.
Yeah. But anyway, many thanks to the people listening to us right now. SVGA has recently passed its first anniversary. That's congratulations,
wow,
Robert.
We've been doing this a year. All right.
And
cheers.
Cheers. And I'm sure you're as eager as I am to continue to talk about all games. Hopefully in less than...
Happy to be back to it, because it's... Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully it won't take us, 4 months to do another episode?
It's been a while. Yeah, it was a really awful move, and I am sorry.
That's all. I mean, it's life. Sometimes...
I mean, I'm mostly apologizing to the listeners, not to you. But
in the meantime, if you want to catch up on our previous episodes, including the DLC, you can find them on pf.ca. We're also on Balado Quebec, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. And if you like what you're hearing, if you want to support the podcast, you can help us on the Buy Me a Coffee platform. We'll put a link in the description of the episode and on pf.ca. Until next time.
Bye, guys.